Rajagopal. And Rajagopal helped me to read the first book on computers. I was in Madras, and Rajagopal was also in Madras. And what happened was, I go to my college library and look for a book on computers. Not college.
Sir, one second. There is some disturbance in the audio. Suddenly, just can you check your audio connections?
I'm sorry, didn't hear.
Can you please check your audio connection, because you can't
No
hear?
audio.
Can you hear me now?
No. No audio.
I can hear you. I can hear you. You can't hear me. There is a audio connection problem. No? So,
Oh. Okay. Can't see.
one second. I'll put it in the chat. I'll put it in the chat.
You can hear me, but I am not able to hear you at all. Oh, my audio suddenly changed. It's possible I'm running out of power. It's possible, sounds more distant. I think what is happening is the power supply, which was out of, what do you call it, bank. The power bank is running out. I will go and get a cable and connect up the power bank so that it will charge.
Sure.
I'm sorry about this.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this is one nice. So let's sort of start back from your engineering days. You were talking about your friend Ramalingam or Ramakrishnan, right? We can start from there.
Rajagopal.
Sorry, Rajagopal. Yeah.
Because my college library did not have a computer book, Rajagopal borrowed. I was studying in Coimbatore at that time, and Rajagopal and I were both studying. Rajagopal was a member of the British Council Library, and the British Council Library had one book on computers, or maybe two books on computers, and you are not supposed to take a book out of the British Council Library out of town. But Rajagopal said, okay, I will go with it another month and I will return the book. And he brought the book for me to Coimbatore. And he read it and then lent it to me. And I read it. So that is how we got into computers. So I was interested in computers. When I was coming out of engineering college, I had done a BE in electrical engineering, which I enjoyed. And as a matter of fact, it is that electrical engineering background that made it easier for me to do the internet related work.
Yeah.
And when I came out of it, I said, I will either work with computers or I will join ISRO and I will work with some space technology or aeronautics. Or what was the third? Either I will work with electronics or with computers, etc., etc. So I had a range of 2 or 3 things which I was willing to do. I'm mentioning this especially because you have to be flexible in life. The life deals you cards, and what kind of cards it deals you, it's not for you to choose. You get a hand of cards. You play, how well you play with the cards you get is what matters.
Wonderful.
So I was prepared to deal with the cards that life was dealing me. And for instance, went to Bombay for getting into. I wanted to study master's degree in electronics. I go to the IIT Bombay, and the registrar says, sorry, you cannot sit for the test for electronics because in your degree, you have done only one paper in electronics. So I didn't know what to do. I said, please allow me to go to the committee and I will ask the committee if they will give me a permission. So I went to the committee. Committee says, but you have done very little electronics. And I said, sir, ask me questions in electronics. If I answer them well, you must give me a chance to study electronics. And so the committee actually was an electrical engineering committee, but it consisted of very broad-minded people. Professor Bedford, who was the chairman, he said, okay, let's test this guy in electronics, he said. So they asked a few questions and I answered them. Then he said, okay, come with me. Took me to the electronics committee. And he said, hey, this guy doesn't want to study with us. You check him out on electronics. So I got a chance.
Okay.
So I mentioned this mainly because what happens in life, you never know.
True.
And they tested me in electronics and they found I was okay. They gave me a admission. So such was life. It is nice to remember those days now.
No, very true. And as you said, life deals you a set of cards, and it all depends on how you play it. It also depends on how much you need something and how bold are you to go and ask for it. If you had not sought that meeting with the committee, probably you wouldn't have done electronics, right?
It doesn't require too much of guts because you have nothing to lose.
Yeah, that's true.
You want electronics and you tell them.
Yeah, but Dr. Ramani, there is something, I know we are moving away from computer science, but there is something amongst our younger generation. They don't have, they don't come up and ask questions. They don't go beyond what has been set as the rule, beyond the rule book. Is that something that you're seeing more and more?
No, I won't blame the younger generation. The truth is, it is the job of a teacher who has to teach the most important thing in education to your student. What is the most important thing? That learning is fun. I don't think anything else is more important than that. What should we learn? I am, today 80 years old, 81. And why am I learning things? Reading something or the other and teaching myself something. And why am I doing it? I'm not doing it for any other reason, but for me, the biggest pleasure in life is learning. And I do not know, friends like Mahadev and Rajagopalan and all that help me to learn that, enjoy that. That is what matters.
Yeah.
It is not so much of, getting an award or getting this or that. These are not material. What is material is that you look forward to learning something throughout your life, that you are able to enjoy it. I think so. It is the job of the teacher. I have been fortunate in having great teachers all my life.
Amazing. And you have been a teacher yourself too. You have, we'll come to that. So, you did your master's, and then how did you land up in the US?
Uh, you might say, you might give me credit for being a bit bold, like I was bold with that committee. In that sense, you may give me credit. The thing is, I had a peculiar habit. The first summer in my engineering college, I did not want to waste my time. So I wanted an internship. In those days, nobody talked about an internship. All I went around asking voluntarily was, can I work somewhere, do something, learn something? So I went to the PhD industries in Coimbatore and worked and learned peculiar things, very interesting things. Like the first week I spent learning painting.
Okay. Mm.
It was it was the it was a factory and had some. I think their primary product was water pumps.
Mm-hmm.
So and I was sitting around painting water pumps, and
Okay.
1 week I enjoyed that also,
Mm.
and then learned various things. Next summer, as an NCC cadet, I wanted to work in an army workshop, and my commanding officer managed to get me into the army base workshop in Bangalore.
Mm-hmm.
I came to also and spent a summer, and I learned very peculiar things. Our captain allowed me to learn driving
Mm-hmm.
on a military truck. So I was driving around uh, a military truck. So then the next summer, I learned something else. I forget what. And once I went to Bombay, and I was at the IIT Bombay. I went around to the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research,
Mm.
which had India's first computer,
Yeah.
uh, was building the first computer,
First
whatever.
computer. Mm. Mm.
So I went there and said, can I work here in the summer? And as an intern,
Mm.
I
Mm.
can learn some computer. So they said, okay, you're welcome. And I started working there, building some electronic device. And really the device was useful and it worked and it went places. So it was a great pleasure for me to learn about computers there. So there I went to the gentleman, Mr. Kane, who was the chief programmer,
Mm.
to teach me some programming. So I learned a little bit of programming. That's how I got into the computer field.
Okay. Mm.
And the Tata Institute was kind enough to let me do my IIT project in their lab.
Okay.
And they had transistors and things like that, which very few labs in India had. So I could use up 300 transistors and build a device.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was amazing. And at the end of that, in summer, I started building something.
Mm-hmm.
Then they allowed me to do a 1 year project there. As an IIT student, I used to travel regularly, and IIT had great academics who allowed me to do a project outside,
Mm-hmm.
and so I came to TIFR. And I came to TIFR, and having done 1 year of that, at the end of that, they said, "Look, uh, they hired me, gave me a
Mm-hmm.
job, and I could have got a job as a lecturer at IIT, or I could have got a job at TIFR. And since TIFR was much better equipped uh, lab, I stayed with TIFR.
Yeah. Mm. So that's good. So how did you how did you get interested in data communication? Where did that come to you? What was your journey? Can you talk about your journey from TFR to the Americas and then back?
That's easy. It turned out that 6 rupee radio valve that I bought when I was in the 8th standard or something.
Mm-hmm.
The background was amateur radio. The popular science I was reading taught me not only how to build radio receivers, it also taught us how to build a radio transmitter.
Mm.
I never built a radio transmitter, but the dream was always to build a radio transmitter
Yes.
and be an amateur radio
Yeah. Yeah.
person. But the interest in amateur radio made me very excited and interested. Uh, you're going to edit this, so I might as well tell you a little bit of something else.
Sure, sure.
You can cut it out if you don't like. Amateur radio was romance. It was exciting. Amateur radio was the classical thing that took a technology and imagination and put them together and gave people peculiar experiences, exciting experiences. So I'm going to tell you about the experience of a friend of mine, older than me, and a very well-known electronics entrepreneur in India, Colonel Roy.
Mm-hmm.
Colonel Roy one day came to National Center for Software Technology, where we were setting up the internet. And he came as a member of a committee to review our work, Internet project. When he came, I had set up an arrangement whereby an Indian student in the United States somewhere would be available on the internet to talk on the terminal, doing what we call chat nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
So this guy was at 2 o'clock at night, he was waiting, sitting up and awake so that he could talk to my committee member who was going to review our work. So I took him and said, "Sir, there is this guy at New Jersey, he's going to talk to you." Started typing. And he saw that. He put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "Ramani, I know how you feel." Then he told me his story. He had been at Banaras Hindu University as a student.
Mm.
And he was a radio amateur. He had built a radio transmitter. And on the floor, there was no bed in the room, probably no table. So his radio transmitter was sitting on the floor next to his bed. And he would sit on his bed and talk to other people elsewhere in the world. And he was talking to somebody. And one day he said, I'm trying to remember the first name, Louis. The person was Louis. So he said, "Louis, your signal strength is much higher now. What happened? You got a higher power transmitter or what?" Louis said, "No, I have moved to Delhi. I used to be in Colombo, and now I have moved to Delhi. It's much closer to Banaras." And so Colonel Roy says, in those days he was not a colonel, he was 17 years old, or 18 years or whatever. And Roy says, "Oh, you are in Delhi. It'll be nice if we meet sometime," or something like that. He says, "Yes, I'm going to come next month to Banaras, and I will drop in. I would like to see your transmitter you have built yourself," something like that. He said, "Okay." And he was waiting for this day to come. A radio amateur would drop in. And then suddenly, about 10 days before the event, before his coming, all hell broke loose. And the principal's office called him up, and he goes there. And he said, "What have you been doing? You have a radio transmitter in your room?" He says, "Yes." And there is a gentleman waiting with the principal. He is the commissioner of the city. or somebody, some high official, and they say, we have a flight.
Yeah.
So the principal says, your bedroom is not your hostel room is not the right place for the transmitter. You bring it to the physics lab. Then slowly he understands. The visitor who was coming to meet him, Louis, was actually Louis Mountbatten.
Oh my God. Okay. I see. Yeah.
The Viceroy of India. But, they say on the internet, nobody knows you are a dog.
Yes.
You can be anybody, man or dog or whatever. All are equal.
Yes.
So in the amateur radio, whether you are a student or whether you are the Viceroy of India, it doesn't make a difference. So that is the kind of excitement that amateur radio gave us.
Yeah.
So when computers made it possible to talk, in the amateur radio days, there must have been 100 amateurs in India. I'm particularly talking about the British days.
Yeah.
Not too many people would have an amateur radio license. But today on the internet, every one of us are chatting.
Yes.
Every one of us are enjoying email. So it was a very smooth transition from an excitement with amateur radio to an excitement with telecommunications.
No, very true. I mean, I remember my amateur radio courses that I did, deciphering the Morse code and, getting the first transmitter. We never built the transmitter ourselves, but we got the transmitter and tuning it to the right frequency and, chatting with people who are unknown to you. It was just an amazing. We used to go to a lab, to do all this. We never could, afford to get it and build things at home. But as you said, now I see where this whole thing is coming, through, the experience, the excitement that you get building things with your hands, which probably drew you towards doing new things, right? So can we now spend a little bit time on how did you, from TIFR, were you involved in building the first India's computer? Were you involved in that project? How did?
No.
Okay.
No. The first Indian computer had been built earlier. I joined only, by the time I joined TIFR, it was 1963 when I went as a student intern. Okay. It was 1964 when I joined as an employee.
Okay.
As a research assistant, research associate, we were called. And so the dreams were very high. The dream was artificial intelligence. You are not just excited with one thing. When you are excited with the technology, all technologies are exciting. And the highest form of technology is the technology that challenges thinking. Right. How do you understand language?
Right.
How do you think? How do you solve problems? So, and also as a person interested in learning, since you are learning, you don't mind investing 5 years getting an engineering degree and then moving away from engineering and doing artificial intelligence. And also, an Institute of Fundamental Research gives you that freedom. And therefore, I had a choice. I found the professor with artificial intelligence. I said I want to do a PhD with him and started on this entirely new area, Professor Narasimhan. But the peculiar thing was, Professor Narasimhan was also very much of the same kind of person for whom learning is fun, who enjoys learning, when he learns one field, he is not restricted to that. He moves on, he learns another field. And he was the India's first student of artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And he had gone to the US where he learned about computing. He came back to India and designed India's first computer and built it. Whether exactly it is the first computer or second computer, I will not argue, because there are many kinds of computers. There is analog computers, there are digital computers,
Yeah.
and so that is not the matter. But Narasimhan did amazing things with the first computer. That computer he built not just as something to learn about computing, which was his primary motive, I am sure, but the he coupled it with the value system, which said hundreds of people should learn about computers. Hundreds of people should be able to use it. They should use a computer not only as a computer, they should design a bridge. They should design a building. They should analyze it for its structural stability. So it became India's first computer utility, the India's first computer center. Hundreds of people came and learned. And this was such an early computer, every day one valve will burn out.
Okay.
It probably had 2,000 valves or something. The valves will burn out because they're not as good as transistors in terms of longevity. And he was doing this. But when he heard, I would like to do what he was learning, artificial intelligence, he enrolled me as his PhD student. And so I learned, and so my PhD was in artificial intelligence.
Okay. I see.
1969.
Okay.
And what do you do? Tata Institute has one of those great traditions. And it's a tradition I would like to see in other places, more in India. If you finish your PhD, you ought to go and spend some time as a postdoc somewhere.
Okay.
Either you leave TIFR and go and work somewhere, another lab usually, or if you have a TIFR job already, not just a PhD student, TIFR would give you leave to go and do research somewhere else for a year or two. So my time came to get a sabbatical leave. And I went to Carnegie Mellon.
Okay.
So when I went to Carnegie Mellon, I